All right, folks. Thanks for joining us today on a Family Through Service, a video podcast.
Yeah.
V2VG video podcast.
We're back in your house.
Back in the house. We came back from a fishing trip that we went on. That was pretty fun.
Oh, my
It wasn't pretty
goodness.
fun. It was a lot of fucking fun.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was a very natural high.
Yeah.
And,
That was. I was sore as shit the next 2 days, though.
Yes, absolutely.
I was sore on the boat.
And some of them guys, they make it look easy, huh? I mean,
I tell you what, I am too fat and too old to be, mostly too fat to be doing that. But it was a lot of fun. We caught together. We caught like 9 fish. We were able to keep 7.
Yeah.
And then we cooked. We had what was it for dinner?
you did fish and chips, and you made gluten-free batter for Sarah.
Yep.
And then you did the chowder.
Oh, the fish
seafood
chowder.
Oh my goodness.
So we
That was
had
so good.
what we were able to keep. We caught cod, but we had to throw it back because it wasn't the season. This
Yeah.
isn't what the episode's about, by the way.
No.
Because we already did this video, which should be posted before this one. But we caught cod, but we got to keep haddock, redfish, and a cusk. But it was a lot of fun. But while we were there, well, actually on our way there, we came up with, Chuck actually had the idea before this fishing trip that we should do a video on what it is that we do when a client contacts us about the whole intake process.
And some basic etiquette, things you maybe should not say to
Yeah.
organizations that are trying to help you.
Because we already came up with a document for an internal document for our board members on if you want to be a caseworker, this is the caseworker flow.
Yeah.
And then we ran into what would have been a potential client who was we'll get into that who kind of messed up and said some things that were a little off. So
Yeah.
that's why we're going to add not just what happens during the intake process, but what you should probably refrain from saying.
And, as a growing organization, we do have some coming and goings of board members. So
Right.
Even though some things seem like we're repeating ourselves to us, to other board members who are new, it's the first time hearing it. So we figured we'd do this as a educational way for the board who is maybe not that familiar with what we do as well,
Right.
as those who are interested in searching for our assistance.
And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to put up some pictures of our application and a basic application and
Yeah.
things like that. And so that way people can get a sort of a visual.
Yeah, because even to start off with, right? The application, when you hear application, especially veterans, you hear you think of a stack of papers, and that's not at all what we have. We have two pages. One is your essential information, your name. Your next section would be your caregiver, spouse, whatever, and then the last section on that first page would be any dependents that you have.
It's basically contact info and a little bit about your service for eligibility verification.
Yeah,
It's not like what's your credit score and
we don't even take people's social security numbers
No.
unless we're pushing a case to an actual VA rep, whether it be a VSO or
who
whatnot.
will need the social security
Yeah.
number, but we don't. We always tell people you can redact that information on any documents
Yeah.
you send us.
And then
Redaction, of course, means to block it out.
our page 2 is, all the qualifying factors: branch of service, National Guard, reserves, police
length of
officer,
service.
all those things.
Yeah.
The only question we really ask, and it's because of how many people don't open up about their PTSD, is were you involved in any type of traumatic event? So that maybe we can get you some assistance.
However, we don't ask what type of traumatic
No.
event, just if you were involved in a traumatic event, and if yes, do you want any assistance in that area?
Yeah.
Not well. What was it? We don't get involved in that. That's not our lane at that time.
And that's the essentials of the paperwork
It really is
that would have to be filled out
for an intake.
Yeah. Typically, we fill it out anyway to save the headache for
Yeah.
our clients, because we understand we've been through many processes where, we've gotten hand cramps and carpal tunnel filling out our own paperwork.
Yeah, for real.
So
usually in applications, thunk.
yeah,
Triplicate, right? So this is what happens. There's many ways that you can get in touch with Veterans to Veterans group, but typically we'd like to have a paper trail, whether it's digital or otherwise, preferably digital, and we get a person contacts Veterans to Veterans group and says they need assistance. So we get in touch with them, and eventually there is a phone call that we determine that, okay, these people need assistance, we're going to call them. So the first step in the application, the intake process, is making a personal connection.
No, absolutely.
A voice connection.
And, I mean, you really have to be, really bad off individual as far as unprofessional and not nice in order to be rejected from the start from us. I mean, I don't think other than this one individual, we have never at any point just said no without at least looking into
one.
it. Yeah.
Right. So the first step is making a voice connection, a personal connection, right? And that's when we contact, and Chuck's our lead caseworker, but we always do a connection where we work in pairs. The caseworkers typically, 99% of the time, we try to work in pairs so that way when the information comes across, Chuck will write something down, I'll write something down, and then we collaborate our notes together and we create a case file.
Yeah.
And that case file is not just the pertinent information, it's what happened, right? So the first step is contacting the person or having them contact us, and then we have a either face-to-face meeting if it's reasonable,
which we prefer. I think it's the most personable, right?
Or a voice meeting that's when we do the application and then we get their story, which is tell us not just what you need us to help you with, but a little bit of the background. Why do you need the help? Tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
We want to know about you and your case. What happened? Why it happened? Let's get the story. And there's a reason for that.
Well, and, a big part of it is, too, we're young. We have a small treasury. And with that fact, we have to break it up into our 4 tiers of emergent, right? So we have our want, which almost always, in fact, it always falls through the holiday season. That's a special program. We have our need, which is not a huge time frame issue. Our emergency is time frame, and your way of living is going to change, and crisis is you need help yesterday.
And we do know that there are many situations that fall in the in-between area.
Yes.
A necessary want a need. But we do the best we can to try to, and this is our internal, it's definitely a necessity for the client, but for our purposes, we have to catalog it in one of those 4 categories. So that's where Chuck and I step in and say, okay, how does it affect their livelihood? That's why we get the story. That's one of the reasons why we got the story.
Yeah, and we, even though it's for our internal records, we try and be open with our clients and say, okay, this falls under an emergency, not quite a crisis, and here is why.
Right. We don't just say, your opinion is invalid, we don't care. That's not how we do it. So, and the other reason we get the whole story is because when we present the case to our board of directors for a motion, we want them to be as up to date on the information as we are when we condense it. So that way we're not just saying, the client is requesting $300 to pay their past due utility bill. What do you think? We need to explain why. Their client is requesting $300 to pay their utility bill. They've never been behind before. The client lost their job due to COVID.
Whatever the case,
we're trying to provide some background, is what I'm trying to say.
Typically,
and it's helpful for that.
When we go for a financial assistance, so we have 2 types of assistance. We have our financial, which we'll talk about first, is that's the only time we actually talk about our clients as a number, and is for their confidentiality because our board members have not met them. It would be
case number 587.
Yeah, and it's not to demoralize them, but it's till that rapport is built up and we've received permission from the clients to allow to use their names for whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of times, if we're talking about Sergeant First Class Horn, we've been given her by her permission many a times to use her name in anything we do.
Yeah.
But a new case we just picked up was 585, and
whatever.
we have not been given any specific permission to do that. So whenever we do an actual motion, it would be case 585, and then it would break down the story in the motion.
And that will help our board members understand some background as to why this client needs the assistance. And it's not just they're voting on numbers without any understanding of why this case is, because our board members need to know a little bit of the background. That's the point. And if they want more details, then they can ask us and we'll provide that. But it just gives us a little bit of wiggle room to provide some details with some anonymity for the client. My dog was bleeding, so we had to figure that out. We got a little nick on her ear. Don't know where that came from, but whatever. She's scratching her ear, so that might be it. So
who knows, right?
yeah, so we have to provide some context for our board members. I mean, obviously that's an important thing. The next step, of course, is we get the story from the veteran or first responder, whatever. We then verify their eligibility. We make sure that if they're a veteran or even an active duty service member, that they've sent across their eligibility requirements, which is
actually really simple, right? I mean,
it's super simple.
If you're a first responder, some sort of letterhead from your department, your commander, commanding officer, whatever it would be, your chief or whatnot.
And then what we would do is call that department to verify.
Yeah.
That's eligibility verification.
And active duty would either be orders, like to-date orders, or
a current LES.
LES.
Yep.
Or even a letterhead from that commanding officer would absolutely work.
Of course, yeah.
And then the only one that has a little bit of an exception is if it's someone who's a veteran. Typically, we want to get their DD-214.
Yeah.
But occasionally, it seems actually more now than ever, we have referrals from the VA system.
From a social worker or some such agent.
Yeah. And so in order to be in the VA system for healthcare and for assistance, you need to meet our requirements anyway, which is far less than what they need. And ours basically is, and even with that, we could do an exception to policy, is do not have a dishonorable discharge.
Right.
Now, if there is that, depending on the story and the situation, and it can be verified, then we could always do an exception to policy.
Yep.
But that's a whole nother road with us. So,
and that's how we do eligibility verification, just because we have a very specific lane that we have to stay in because of our charter, our bylaws, and our policy. So that's our next step. So after we've heard your story, right, verified your eligibility, Chuck and I then sit together and we compare our notes and we type up a case file, which is where we condense all of our notes into one memo.
Yes.
That's basically a cross between a memo and a bullet point situation. So it's a very, like I said, it's a condensed version of the story.
Yeah, it's almost like an outline.
Yeah.
And depending on whether we do a financial aid or a referral, varies a little bit. With a financial aid, we're sticking to one very specific situation.
Well, the tone varies, for sure. Yeah.
You know, okay, they're behind on their electric bill. So we do all that stuff, then we create our memo, and at that point we have to verify that their electric bill is what they say it is.
Yep.
We have to verify that it hasn't been late or whatever the case is.
So we'll contact the company.
Yeah.
The utility company. We'll contact the
electric company, whatever it is.
So it's not just that we'll take the client's word that I need $300 for the electric. Okay, send us a copy of the bill.
Yes.
And then we'll contact the electric company and say, is this the current amount that they're behind on? Because sometimes they're behind more, or sometimes they've made a payment and we say, actually, you're only behind this amount, whatever. So we square all those numbers away, because before we present it to the board, we need an accurate number.
Yes, and then we do that, right?
To
we
present.
Create a motion, and we say, again, for privacy reasons, we have case so-and-so. Here's the story. The request is financial aid for $400 for the electric bill due to these reasons.
Made payable to Northeast Electric, whatever.
Yeah, whatever it happens to be. And we always pay the third party. We never pay an actual client
right. And
as part of our bylaws.
That's to cover that's a CYA. CYA is cover your ass.
Yes, right.
We don't pay the client directly because, not in theory, the reality is they could use that money for whatever they want. And not to say that they would use it for something other, right? But
and that's the thing. A good majority of veterans, first responders, are honest, decent people. But the fact is that there are people who are not, right? I mean,
and that just covers us and it covers them, because if we verify that they are behind on these utilities, and we did pay them directly and they used it for something else, then they'd still be behind on the utilities, and that doesn't help anybody.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? In fact, that hurts us in the ability to help another person of need, right? I mean... And
the other branch is, if we do research type of help, we then take that memo and we use that as a launching pad to conduct research on their behalf, contact other organizations on their behalf, and then we stay in contact with the client and or their family, and we use it as a sort of a foundational information, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is what we have on the family. How can you help us? XYZ organization or agency.
And it could be something as simple as one of our clients has $10,000 in the bank. They want help finding a reputable car dealer. So they're not looking for the financial aid aspect. They just want help being guided into the right direction so that they don't get taken advantage of. And that's easy enough. Chances are it's not really ever that easy. But that is a possibility.
For death benefits, right? Which be a widow, which we've helped.
Which is unfortunate, but it is relatively easy for us to get some of that information, which is... again, it's hard for them, but they don't have to go through the steps and the paperwork and being treated as just somebody in the way of their lunch break with us.
And also, in addition to that, being treated as just another whomever, when in terms of getting death benefit information, these people ostensibly are going through a very tough period in their life. When they contact, say, the VA, for example, the VA will say, you need form XYZ 999, all this stuff. They throw all this information at them. They can't, it's hard to process all this at once. If they contact us and say, look, I don't understand all this, can you help me? We're sort of not sort of, we are a neutral party.
Yes.
We can say, look, just relax. You need to grieve, spend your time grieving, be with your family. We'll take care of all the research and details, and then we'll provide you with basically a turnkey type of situation where, look, here's all the paperwork you need. Read it. If it looks good, sign it. Have people look it over, sign it, and then you'll get the death benefits that you need. Or here is a direct person you need to speak to. Here's the VSO to speak to. Not here's the 1-800 number to call, because that's not going to help anybody. Anybody can find that. Right?
And I think the reason it's easier for us to do it is that we may, and we tend to create at least some sort of an emotional relationship with our client, but we don't have that emotional relationship or that loss of a relationship of who passed away. So what we're trying to do is in that person's best interest, and it really has nothing to do with the person passing away, so it doesn't corrupt or cloud our mindset.
I agree. We don't view our clients as family per se, but we do view them as people. So their loss is like, if their grandfather died, we don't suffer the pain of their loss.
Absolutely.
But we do treat them as people, and we understand their loss and we feel their pain. So they're not just, like Chuck said earlier, getting in our way of our lunch break. So we can bridge that gap between a organization who's just, yeah, whatever, just here's a stack of papers, fill it out, we don't care, and the family member who's trying to grieve and has no familiarity with any of this. We're sort of the middleman to say, look, we can take care of it for you. We'll get you squared away. You need time to process and grieve with your family and friends, and we do that. And those are the two main areas that we do. We also have programs that we do, but it's not really a client intake issue.
Yeah.
But that's how we do that.
We really, and we created kind of a separate format, is we work specifically with Crystal Letourneau, who is the VSO for New Hampshire, the entire state of New Hampshire.
She is fantastic.
So we actually kind of try and we do our intake, but we actually, in a way, format her own intake so that way she can kind of get right to business. So we listen to what the client already has for Comp and Pen, what their concerns are, and then we ask the detailed questions. Okay, well, how many days a week does your back bother you? Do you hear ringing in your ears? And then we
for our memo, for our list.
Yeah, we put all that down.
We try to make it
forward
easy
it to
as
her.
possible. Right, exactly what Chuck you're saying is that we try to make it as easy as possible with our memo. So when we bring that forward to other organizations, our intake should, our idea is, right?
Hopefully.
Hopefully, it should have all the information that any organization needs to ask, or at least most of it.
Yeah.
Unless they have something very specific to ask.
And even
like,
with that,
how does your back feel on Wednesdays at 2:30 p.m.? Right?
And we've kind of modified the expansion of our application. So we have our basic application, but we've taken on financial aid and what is it called?
Like the budget process?
Budget plan. Yeah. But that is only if we're going to be pushing a client to, say, Easter Seals or Friends of Veterans who already require those paperwork. We don't use it unless it's something that's over $500 for us. So it's very interesting on how we try and really minimize the amount of paperwork and
of course, the reason for that is we want to make sure the client doesn't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Like, I have to do another budget sheet every time. We almost forgot to mention another thing we do when we're hearing their story. Okay, when we're hearing the client's story and we're asking them what are you that you're asking us for? I need rent. We also ask them, well, what else do you need? How are you on food? How are you on fuel? How are you on your utility bills? Your rent? They could be contacting us about, like you said earlier, they could be contacting us about looking for a new vehicle, and we'll still ask them, are you behind on any bills? How are you with food? How are you with fuel? I mean, is there anything else you need help with? Anything you can think of? And then we've even, asked
specific questions,
very specific
especially
questions.
wintertime, right?
Yeah.
What type of heat do you have? Do you need any oil for your heat?
Yeah, are you behind on your oil bill? No. Well, how much oil do you have? Do you think you'll be behind soon?
Yep.
Because sometimes people, a lot of the people we work with are very prideful people, so they'll be very direct. No, I'm not behind. And then we say, okay, well, are you going to be behind? Well, it turns out I might be behind next month because I can't afford. Okay, we can work with that. Let's tackle your first issue now, and then we'll put that into the next bracket of help. So we definitely do ask what other needs they have or that they might have down the line. We try to address those needs that might be coming up because, again, sometimes they'll be very specific and say, no, I'm not behind on anything, when they know that they are going to be behind soon. And we try to address those then. Whether it's something as minor as, look, I need a tank of gas on my car, or something more important like I need a fill up on my oil bill, and oil tank. I mean,
one of the things I like about the way we do things is that we don't necessarily need notice of being behind or a missed payment. You know what I mean? If we see their bill and their bill is due in a week, we could still put that motion up, and it could pass and pay the bill.
Right, because we don't need, because of the size of our organization, we don't need for it to be already in arrears. We can say, look, we don't need to wait for it to get to an emergency or a necessity. It's already a need now. why wait for it to go into collections, basically?
Yeah, and what other kind of fees can be tacked on and all that.
Let's hit this now before it gets worse.
Yeah,
and that's part of our process for sure. But that's how that in a nutshell. That's a big nutshell. That's our process. However, there are some things that clients can do that can throw us off. Some things that our clients can do to make things easier for us or more difficult for us.
Very true.
If they are responsive and they can text things to us quickly, or they are able to use technology as far as scanning a document or texting a document over, that makes things very, very convenient for us.
Yeah, emails, all that stuff past our initial phone conversation. We don't start an intake with a text.
No.
No organization or business will.
We've had clients say, "Oh, can I just text you this?" No, that's not exactly how it works.
But hey, if we only got your email and your phone number, we still needed your spouse's. Yes, you can text us that information.
Right, exactly.
Those type of things.
But if we do, we've run across a situation recently where we've asked a client has contacted us via text and said, "I need assistance for X." We said, "Okay, we can help you with that. We can look into that. We need to get some information, some eligibility information from you." And they said no, and we said, "Okay." And Chuck said, "Well, you lose something. You lose some context in text. It might be an older gentleman who's just very shaky and just says no." Yeah. And we said, "Okay." So I wrote this long thing, and I said, "Okay, well, do you have access to your DD-214?" "Yes, I have access to all my records." So now I'm already like, well, that's weird. So I said, "Well, is it that your phone can send, can you not send pictures on your phone?" You see how we're trying to work our way? Like, well, why can you not send us any eligibility? And I explained why we need eligibility verification. First of all, this person came out of nowhere, right? It wasn't a referral from an agency, from a social worker at the time.
Yeah, at that point, we didn't realize that if this individual would have just simply said, "So-and-so at the VA in Littleton gave me your information," that would have been the end all of it, because all we would have to do is contact that social worker.
And say, "Hey, is this person from you?"
And
yes.
You even specified that as far as one of our verifications.
But this person was like, "No." And then this person apparently got frustrated and said, Are you on your meds? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you on your meds? Forget to ask for any help." And I was like, "Excuse, am I on my meds?" Like, fuck you, dude. Like, are you No. And then Chuck actually made a great comeback, which I didn't say, because we got to be professional to people, because first of all, you don't know who you're talking to, and second of all, it's the organization's reputation's out there. But for me personally, I was like, "Fuck you." And Chuck was like, "No, but what you should have said was, not only am I on my meds, but my other personality is on my meds." But yes, like as a person who's asking for assistance, you can help yourself or you can hinder yourself by how you handle yourself with an agency.
It really is.
What it boils down to is, don't be a dick. And it's 2021, the year 2021. You have to be able to navigate the modern age a little bit to be able to help yourself. And if you can't, go to some place or someone who can help you.
And on the flip side of that, with today's technology, don't try and be one of these scam artists, because you will be found out. Yeah, like, it's easier and easier now to find, especially in a small area like where we live. It's very easy for me to find out by touching base with just a handful of people if they know this individual and do they really need assistance. And that did happen with us. One of our first few cases.
Yeah.
And found out he was doing that with the food pantry. He was doing that at the VA. But
that was an interesting one. It wasn't just. Yes, the person was a veteran. Yeah, but it was more. See, that's not enough for eligibility requirements. So, yeah, they were a veteran, but no, they didn't need assistance even though they asked for it. So, when we check for this stuff, it's not like we just check the box and move on. We do a little bit of digging. We do a little bit of due diligence. So, yeah, I mean, it's not like we just say, hey, yeah, we verify this person's a veteran or a first responder. Okay, let's give them $500.
Yeah, right.
It's not what we do.
And that's a whole nother process we won't get into. But the last thing that we do as an organization, after we've committed the type of assistance that was needed and stuff,
Yep.
is we break them into a contact roster. So depending on what their severity was, are we contacting them once a month, 3 times every 3 months, or every 6 months, and things to follow up, because
and
you
you
never
shuffle
know.
them through that bracket.
Yeah, and it all varies, you know. I mean, we have cases of guys that we did 2 resources for, and one came back, he's 100% waiting on another one. But then all of a sudden, I check in, and he's like, oh, well, we're looking to move. Not a big issue, but if you happen to see this. And so then, you know, we just talk about it. Do we know of this size house in town? So you just never know when something might come up for the individual, even if they're in a much better spot than they were when
Yep.
you first met. And so that's always a fun. Plus, we actually have clients who reach out to us to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas,
they do.
just to genuinely check on us.
Yeah.
So it's really a great relationship we try and form with our
And I
our
think that's
clients.
because we treat our clients, as we said earlier, as people and not as numbers, because it's important. We're not one of those agencies who say, oh, you're like family. No, but you are like friends. And you are our family through our service. Your family through service is our motto. Yes, you are our brothers and sisters in arms. But when you reach out to us for assistance, we treat you as the person you are. You're not a number to us. Your case, your situation isn't just out there as in, oh, it's happening. We understand. We care. You know, we're actual people. This is why we're doing these videos, is because we want to have fun. We want people to know what we're doing. We want people to understand we're just 2 guys.
Yeah,
you know,
just to
and-
get to know us as people, and not like, yes, it's a Family Through Service V2VG podcast, but we don't speak for the organization without unanimous consent. But a lot of times we're talking about our own opinions, our own views, whether we're talking about amendments or hot topics or whatever. Not the store. I'm sorry. Hot topics.
Oh,
the
you're
actual
dating yourself.
issues.
You're dating yourself now.
But, you know, and we have, sometimes we're on the same path with ideas. Other times we vary. And it's important, just like our recent case, listening to the story of both the mother and the father about their child.
Yeah.
Because they're bringing 2 different perspectives, one who works all the time and one who's home out with the kids all the time.
Bro,
you know?
we each had 3 pages of notes on
Yes,
that.
that was...
That's actually, we're working on that case now.
But
it was
emails and text and Facebook messages, they've been very responsive and stuff.
They're
but
great people, and if you follow us on our social media page, you'll know who we're talking about. But we want people to understand that this is our process. This is what we do. We want our board members to understand. We want our volunteers to understand. We want the public to understand that it's a personal process. It doesn't go through a machine and the machine spits it out the end and we just stamp it and a vote comes
Approved,
out.
right?
Approved, disapproved. It's not the way it works. It goes through real people who have real lives, opinions, and everything else. And our board members. Our board members are real people with real opinions.
With real questions.
We have real questions, real discussions on this stuff. They're not a group of yes men and yes women. They ask questions. They ask us, you know, do they need this? Do they need that? Have they thought of this? Have they thought of that? And sometimes we get frustrated. Sometimes we laugh. Sometimes we say, you know, I never thought of that. Let's ask them.
Yeah,
You know,
right?
sometimes they say, well, maybe we should give them more. Maybe we should give them less. You know, we have discussions about our clients' cases. We're a real, I don't want to say human organization, but we're an organization of real people. We're not a huge agency of bureaucracy
No.
where it just goes through and it like slices through a machine and spits it out the other end and says, "Oh, here, cut him a check." It's not how it is with us.
and we genuinely try and do more than what is being asked of us, as much as we possibly can. You know, and like you said, they might have a $300 electric bill, but maybe they need $150 in food, but they're not saying that they need it. So we put our information together and we vote.
So we dig it out of them.
And then we put a motion up for $450 instead of just the $300, and it covers everything. You know, we take care of the bill and we get the grocery cards and kind of cover as much of the needs of a human being as we possibly can with our clients.
And their family, because it's family through service. It's not just the person who needs the help through service.
Yeah.
Because, again, if they're behind on the utility bill, then they might be behind on something else. That's why we check. Because you know what? Our board's going to ask.
And, you know, we've been there, right? I mean, how many times did we not pay a
real.
utility bill to take care of Christmas for the kids?
For real.
Or,
For real.
you know,
It's a really precarious situation to be in when you're doing a balancing act between bills to pay. You know, one bill that you got to pay the other bill.
Yeah.
So you let this bill go behind, so you can pay that bill. And oh, by the way, your kids need clothes for school. I mean, parents are in. It's tough. I don't want to say the economy is tough these years, because it's tough every year, but the economy is tough for a lot of people. And when you're making those balancing acts, sometimes the plates fall, and you need a little bit of help picking them up. And that's where we fall in. And we try to do our best to get as much information as we can, to get as clear of a picture as we can, to present it to our board. This is the actual nutshell. We get contacted by the client. We verify their eligibility for our service. We try to get a clear picture of their need, of their story, so we can present it to our board of directors and or other organizations.
yes.
So that way we can make a determination of their need and how much and what type of help we can give them, and we go from there.
And so
We could have just done that as a video and moved on.
Yeah, right. The last thing, if you can, Eric, is put the 2 pages of our actual application up so people can see. And if they have any questions or suggestions on how to make it better, great.
Oh, sure, yeah. If you have any ideas on how to make it better or whatever, let us know. I mean,
and then the last thing,
Chuck's not going to change it, but
well, maybe. If all goes well, this may be our last video podcast in the house, because the office is coming together.
it's almost done.
And it's on the verge.
It's right there.
So,
Office/studio. That would be great, because then we can get back to podcasting and video podcasting.
doing the whole 9, right?
That would be great. All right. Thanks, folks. We appreciate you hanging out with us. And if you have any questions about our process, procedures, or you need help, let us know. And if you have any thoughts on how we could be more efficient, let us know too.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Thanks.